Well, good morning and welcome to St. James. For those of you in person and those of you online, we are delighted to have you with us. And Lily was so delighted she was coming up the aisle that she was here, and then she was stopped. It is always good to be together to worship with you. And by together, as I say every week, together is not always physical anymore. We've come to recognize that together is Spirit connecting us wherever we are, whenever we are. So if you're watching live or if you're watching later in the week, we know Spirit is connecting you to us and us to you. And for that, we are deeply thankful. I'm James Henry. I'm the pastor here at St. James on the west end of Alexandria, and we welcome you. Today we conclude this installment of a short series that we've been doing based on the spiritual gifts, at least some of them as listed in the Bible. So we began a couple of weeks ago with the speaking gifts like prophecy and tongues and the like. We moved forward to the serving gifts, the ones that involve our hands. And this week we're going to talk about some of the gifts that are probably most challenging to us in a 21st century setting because we're not sure what to do with them. And so we'll be talking about the gifts that are signs of God's presence. That's where we're going today. Now, as we gather ourselves to hear what God might say to us today, we want to gather all of our attention. Our attention is all over the place, and oftentimes it's on whatever show we're watching at home. We had to quit binge watching temporarily. We're watching Something Fire. I don't know what it's called. And in any case, we've binge watched several episodes. So wherever you are, we invite California. Doesn't matter. See? My attention is all over the place this morning, so I want to invite you to bring yourself into the moment. Now, our minds wander, our hearts wander, our emotions wander, but our bodies are always here. When your body starts wandering off without you, that might be concerning. Your body is always where you physically are in form, right here. So a way to bring yourself back into the moment is in some way to pay attention to your body. Notice your breathing. Some people take their pulse to see and feel their heart beating, but the fact that you're conscious means that your heart is beating. I sometimes move through all of my fingers, touching them to my opposable thumb, and that's a way of bringing myself back into the moment. Feel my feet on the floor, feel my bottom in the seat when I'm sitting down. But I bring myself into that moment. Bring myself into that moment. And I want to invite you to bring yourself into the moment because God is present in this moment. Present in all moments. But this is the moment, if I'm attentive, I might catch a glimpse. I might experience something that I feel and know and connect to at a deeper or deep level. So pay attention. Give your attention to this moment. And when you find your mind wandering, not only now, but when you're in a conversation with a friend and you're watching the time go by and you feel like you need to leave, bring yourself back to the moment. Bring yourself back to this moment, whenever this moment is. Linda will bring us a reading.
Our reading for today, James actually selected two and let me choose. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Mary Oliver wrote this, and both of them spoke to me. So I'm going to read Mysteries, Yes. Truly, we live with mysteries too marvelous to be understood. How grass can be nourishing in the mouths of lambs, how rivers and stones are forever in allegiance with gravity, while we ourselves dream of rising. How two hands touch and the bonds will never be broken. How people come from delight or the scars of damage to the comfort of a poem. Let me keep my distance always from those who think they have the answers. Let me keep company always with those who say, "Look," and laugh in astonishment and bow their heads. Our video today comes from the work of the people and is actually a conversation with Jürgen Moltmann, who is actually one of my favorite theologians. I read a bunch of his stuff when I was in seminary because I found that he seemed to capture so much what I felt about God.
Christians live always in Advent, in the expectation of the future of Christ. And the admonition in the New Testament is not pray, but pray and watch. Pray and watch. So you must pray with open ears. Open ears and open eyes to watch the signs of Christ coming.
And what should we look for?
Not catastrophes. I found sometimes in the south of the United States, Christ is coming, expect earthquakes, diseases, etc. No, I expect miracles, the miracles of the kingdom.
What would a miracle look like?
The unexpected. If you don't expect the unexpected, you will not find it. We don't expect the miracles, and therefore we don't see them. They are all around us.
So today we're going to talk about signs, the gifts of the Spirit that are signs. And in particular today we're going to take up 3. And I'm going to admit to you right up front that these are the ones with which I have struggled, the ones that I don't have an answer, a clear answer for you about. You're going to have to work with it yourself. I read about miracles this week because I wondered what that was all about. Because we live in a modern time, and if you really think about it, atomic energy is kind of miraculous. Quantum entanglement. Now that we know that an atom over here is entangled, if it's ever come in contact with this atom over here, they're entangled and they move in unison in ways we don't understand. There are all sorts of things that happen in our world that now we take as science that at the time of Jesus would have seemed exceptionally miraculous. And so when I think about miracles, I wonder what we mean by them in this world today. In fact, some people would say, oh yeah, I'm all about God, but this miracle thing doesn't make sense to you. Well, I'll just give you a heads up. Doesn't make sense to me either. But faith isn't about making sense always. It isn't. I don't know what we do right here every Sunday morning. I know we break some bread I baked yesterday, and we share a cup that I didn't bake yesterday, filled with grape juice from grapes that were squeezed somewhere else and put in a bottle and then brought here. And all of that seems rather mundane and normal. And yet in all of those things, it's kind of miraculous. It's kind of miraculous. So what do we do with these sign gifts? The first two, I have some sense of what they are about. And the third, I will struggle with you and share with you my very thoughts about how I don't know everything. And I'm sure you already knew all of that, but every Sunday morning I get up here and I think, I've got to seem like I know some things. Maybe it would be good if I did. And some things I absolutely know. I know God's love. And there is no doubt in me. It's not even faith anymore for me. Because faith is believing in something you don't have any proof of. And I know it's real. I know that love is real and that God is love. I know those things. It's not about faith anymore. It's about reality that I've experienced. So it's a different kind of thing. And then there are things like this that I don't know. And I'll share them with you anyway because, hey, thinking we do that together. This is from, and you may have heard this before because I have shared it with you before, from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. You're saying, wait, didn't he say something from there last week? Why, yes, I did. So listen carefully. We're looking at verses 7 through 10. A demonstration of the Spirit is given to each person for the common good. A word of wisdom is given by the Spirit to one person, a word of knowledge to another according to the same Spirit. Faith is still another by the same Spirit. Gifts of healing to another in the one Spirit. Performance of miracles to another. Prophecy to another. The ability to tell spirits apart to another. Different kinds of tongues to another. And the interpretation of tongues to still another. All these things are produced by one and the same Spirit who gives what she wants to each person. This is the reading for this morning. Thanks be to God. 3 sign-related, if you will, gifts are given or listed there. 1 is discernment of spirits. 2 is healing, and 3 is performance of miracles, or working of miracles. So let's start with discerning spirits. Discerning spirits is a matter of the heart. It's a matter of God working in unison with our heart. It's about listening carefully and recognizing when things ring deeply true to us and speak to us, and that they are spoken truly in a way that lets us know they're from God. They are from God. They ring true. They sound true. And they don't just sound true because we want to believe them. We live in a world right now where you can choose to silo yourself off and only take in information that completely agrees with whatever you think. If you're Republican, you can choose whatever flavor of Republicanism, whether it's Fox News or Newsmax or somewhere way over there. You can choose that as your silo, and that's the only place you draw news. And so whatever it says is what it says. On the other side, you might choose MSNBC or CNBC or some other more progressive post, and you only listen to that. So whatever they say is true. What's interesting to me is I listen to both. And there are little tiny pieces of what's said on one side and what's said on the other side that ring ever so slightly true. And there are lots of things that don't ring true at all. Because I listen closely and I try to listen without predetermining what is true before I listen. If you've already got a conclusion, you're already looking, it's called confirmation bias. You are constantly looking for something to just confirm what you already believe. You want something to pat you on the back and say, you're absolutely right. You always were. I look for the same thing. If I'm being honest with you, I look for the same thing. I have to catch myself. And that's why being attentive to the moment really matters. And that's how we begin to develop a discernment of spirits as a gift. If we sit and we practice meditative presence, if we practice not letting our mind wander, but really being present and trusting God's grounding in the Spirit, then when something is true, and it doesn't matter who speaks that truth, it doesn't matter what their religion is when they speak that truth, because the truth is really the truth. The truth really is the truth. One of my favorite quotes that Martin Luther King Jr. Has said, and without paying attention, we attribute it to him. You know, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. The source of that is the Dhammapada. It's absolutely true. Hate will never drive out hate. Only love can do that. But the Dhammapada, from our Eastern Buddhist sisters and brothers and Hindu sisters and brothers, that's where that truth came from. It's true. And before I told you it was from a Hindu book, you might have thought it was true, and now you're questioning, oh, but it's from a Hindu book. Maybe it's not true. Truth is truth. And part of learning to discern the truth and trusting ourselves over to a spirit that helps us discern the truth is to over and over again come with that face of a child and say, I am not going to predetermine what is true when I read this. I am going to open myself to what it says. And some kernel of truth may speak to me in the midst of it all. Some kernel of truth may speak to me. So discerning the spirits is something that I feel like in my life God has given me the ability, when I slow down, to pay attention, to really recognize what is true. And on the other side, to recognize when things are not. And perhaps you've had that same experience. It's not just because you align yourself with a way of thinking and only feed yourself with that, but you listen to all the sides and you hear the bit of truth over here and the bit of truth over here, the bit of truth here. And you glean those because you're open to letting God's Spirit speak that as truth. And when your heart is open, truly open, ping. That's the best way I can describe it, except it's a deeper than a ping. It's more like a pong. You can almost feel it when I hear the truth. When I hear it spoken, when I read it in a book, I underline those lines. Some books are so amazing that in the end, what's the point of even underlining anything? Because you're just underlining everything is true. Oh, it's like, you know. But then there are other times when just that little kernel speaks to us. And that little kernel is truth. And that's discerning the spirits. And it's a gift given us by the Spirit, but we have to slow down enough to let Spirit speak. We're always in a rush to get somewhere else. And discernment generally doesn't come fast. It comes very slowly. And it comes to those who are willing to give themselves to the Spirit and who the Spirit determines need that gift. Healing. Now, I've been blessed with a lot of people in my life who give me a lot of wisdom, one of whom, Stephen, is a hospital chaplain and has been a hospice chaplain, and we have conversations about what healing is. For many of us, we have come to think of healing as like magical excision. You have a cancer, I pray that the cancer goes away, and magically, it just disappears. And sometimes, I don't know, cancer does go into remission unexplainably, inexplicably, but healing has got to be bigger than that because the word biblically we use for healing is about being whole. It's about being complete. It's about the same word that we use for salvation is the same word biblically that means to be healed, to be made whole again, not broken into disparate pieces, but whole. And I've told you the story. When I had to do clinical pastoral education, I had to have a unit so that I could be ordained United Methodist clergy person, because clinical pastoral education, CPE for short, is a place where you go and you have to confront your own limitations and be invited to see your own foibles. When you sit with someone in the hospital and you want to give a quick answer so you can get out of the room, as opposed to just be present in that moment. Inside of ourselves, we want to have a pat answer. We want to smooth everything over. And CPE teaches you something else altogether. To really be present, to really listen what the other person is talking about. Are they afraid of death? Are you avoiding talking about death because your own fear of death keeps you from talking about it? That's what CPE talks about. But we talk about what healing really looks like. And I was assigned, I think, because, I could say that my supervisor was a sadist, but I don't think that he was. I think that he knew that James wanted easy answers. So James was assigned the oncology unit, at least for a period of time. The cancer ward, where you went and sat with people oftentimes for whom there was no chance, at least no human chance. And all of the appeals to God to miraculously heal them or to work it out, cut a deal, if you will only heal me, I will do this or that or the other thing, all those kinds of deals. And you hear that sometimes. But the people that I knew who had become whole and yet were not over their cancer were those who had begun to make peace with the gift that the life that they had had thus far was a gift. That this was an opportunity for them to apologize to the brother that they had alienated. And there was a story like that. They had been alienated forever. And the person with cancer realized it was his fault that he had never admitted it. In relationships, there's not one side that's ever at fault. It's usually two sides. But he decided that his brother wasn't going to make the step, so he called his brother. And his brother came to see him. And they talked. And I visited him afterwards. And he had been healed. That relationship had been healed. And God was in it. God is in that healing. Now, yes, spontaneous remission happens. And yes, God's in that too, because God's in everything. But oftentimes, what we imagine to be wholeness, because we are quick thinkers, not thorough thinkers, we're so used to, our country is 250 years old or so? We're adolescents. We're toddlers when it comes to the world. We have stuff around that's been here for 150 years, and we think of it as old. Go visit Greece. 4,000 years, 3,000 years. Go to the Holy Land when it settles down a bit. Go there. See things that are thousands of years old. Go and see Hadrian's Wall. 1,500 or so years or beyond. We're young. We want everything quick. We have fast food. We live by fast food. We want things in the microwave done immediately. We want everything fast. And we want healing fast. When God has a long and beautiful view of the universe in which we live, and God's healing is deeper than whether or not physically our bodies fail us. Healing has got to be the whole person. Coming to terms with our limitations. And some of those limitations include the inability sometimes to do any more. Now, I have seen people come through things I could never have imagined. I don't know. But I think David was told he was going to die, Donnie's husband. I don't know that he was on the verge of death 3 times that I was with him. 3 times. And I rushed to the hospital to be with him. And each time it was wrong. until the last time. It eventually is going to be true for all of us. It's part of being alive. But each time, the doctors were sure he couldn't recover. And whether it was a matter of will or God's act on him, I don't know. And this is where we get to that whole, I don't understand. That word miracles. I spent the week reading about miracles and little miracles. And the truth is, I feel like I'm surrounded by miracles all the time. Little tiny miracles all the time. When I see little Lily, and I remember when she was born, a little tiny person, and I watch her run up and down the aisle. She likes to let us know she's here because she's learning to use her voice. So she's like to, she's fast. That's a miracle. We take those things for granted. Do you ever see those plants that, in spite of the fact you poured concrete there and then you sprayed them with terrible herbicides that are supposed to kill them, that they keep coming back? You know, the hardest thing to kill in my yard is the weeds. I've just finally decided the weeds are my yard. They look great to me. Probably not to my neighbors who have perfect and impeccable lawns. The truth is, miracles are, in part, what we see them, how we see them. The word for miracles in Greek, I don't like to do this. You know I don't like to do the dance with the Greek, but it's dynamis, and it means energy or power. It literally translates as energy or power. God's action, when we talk about miracles, we're anticipating that somehow a power beyond our understanding, an energy beyond our understanding has moved and done something we don't get. And so we call it miracles. I remember growing up, did you ever hear the words, the miracle of modern science or the miracle of modern medicine? Because there was a time 150 years ago, if you had cancer, they didn't really have a name for it, and it would just kill you. There was nothing they could do about it. They couldn't cut it out. It just was a growth that eventually overtook you and killed you. Today, there are possibilities, and now we expect that medicine will save us. And so nothing seems miraculous to us anymore. But you bring in here someone 500 years ago, or say 700 years ago, who has the bubonic plague and is going to die from the bubonic plague, or the black plague as it was called, because of fleas on rats. That's how it was passed along. And they had no idea where it came from. They thought it was a judgment from God. And if somebody actually recovered, which was very rare, they assumed that was a miracle. And they had no idea that our own bodies helped bring us along. Now, I spent the whole week trying to figure out how I was going to tell you about miracles happening everywhere, all the time, in every way. And in a world of modern science where, quantum physics no longer even phases us, understanding the way that our cells regenerate no longer phases us, that all just seems so run-of-the-mill that we've lost the sense that God can still do the unexpected. Now, I'm going to name some things for you, and you decide if they're miracles. In 1992, I became the pastor of St. James United Methodist Church when it was in a different location. A long time ago, yes, I know, ancient times. Some of you weren't even born. When I became the pastor here, my district superintendent, Doug Dillard, told me, St. James is on a downward, the average age is over 70, it's not going to survive. But because Linda's in seminary, we don't want to separate you on two different sides of the Commonwealth of Virginia, so we're going to send you close by. It will probably close in the next couple of years while you're there, and we will not hold it against you. That it closed. And I was like, okay. And it turned around. Now, I'm sure it had something to do with me, but it had everything to do with God. Was it a miracle? Or was that just a natural thing that happened. I run into people all the time. I think that it's eventually going to change, probably in this next year. But they'll say, how long have you been a pastor? 30. I've been under appointment for entering my 37th year of appointment. 2 years I worked in churches. And they were like, all right, and where do you serve now? St. James. How long have you been there? 32 years. Wait, did you say you were United Methodist? Yes. And you've been there for how long? 32 years. Is that a miracle? Is it an accident? Is it a choice? I don't know. When I talk to some people, they're like, this just does not happen. And it does, and it happens in other places. I have other clergy friends who have been in, at least people who are ordained with me at the same time, who was at the same church for 32 years. He's coming back, as far as I know, for a 33rd year. This bishop doesn't like long pastorates beyond 10 years, so we'll see. We'll see. They told me this year I would absolutely going to be the one year I moved, and I didn't. I'm not, as far as I know. I mean, I could get going to annual conference this week. It's not done until she reads the appointments at the end. So I don't know. We'll see. But it would be very disconcerting if something changes between now and then. Are those miracles? When apartheid ended, and finally Nelson Mandela was elected president, and he chose to forgive those who had held him in captivity for 27 years of his life. And because of the location he was held on Robben Island and the White Sands, he had become partially blind. And yet he forgave those who had imprisoned him. Is that a miracle, or is that just kind of an amazing man? Or is it both? Or is it neither? Things change in ways that we can't fully grasp. God is at work all the time. And, you know, I think that we want some kind of unexplainable miracle. Scientists will tell you most of our science isn't completely explainable. They like to put it in neat formulas and translate it in ways that we can make sense of it. Sometimes God acts in ways I understand, and sometimes God does not. I don't have an answer for you what the word miracle really is all about, except that it's about a release of power or energy. It's the word that the Greek translators chose to use when they spoke about this. God's release of energy. When a relationship is healed, is that a release of divine energy? When you fall in love when you thought you never could, is that a release of divine energy? Isn't that miraculous? When little people are born, isn't that miraculous? When we can harness the power of the atom for good and produce power, isn't that kind of a miracle? I don't have the answer, but I invite you to ponder the signs that you see in your life. Spring and summer and fall and winter and spring again. Ponder the light that you see every day. It's about 8.5 minutes old when you see it. And it's all the light you see from the sun is always 8.5 minutes old. It's all new. Every beam of light that you see. It looks constant, but it's fresh. 8.5 minutes old. Give or take. That's how long it takes to travel from the sun here. Is that a miracle, or is that just, before we could explain it, it was a miracle. There are still things that happen in our universe we can't explain. God's power is still unfolding. Energy is still being released. The universe is not finished yet, and neither are we. We look for these signs so that we can know what God needs us to know, to love one another, to seek peace and not war, love and not hate, to recognize our own infinite preciousness and that of all we come in contact with, our own unconditional lovedness and that of everyone we encounter. The fact that every one of us is a unique, irrepeatable gift in this universe. That too is a miracle. That too is a miracle. As I look at it. So, sorry, no answers. No easy answers. If you have some answers and you'd love to give them to me, I'd love to hear them. I would. But in all honesty, I'm ready to move on to the next sermon next week, whatever that is. Because I like the things that I know something about. And maybe I know more than I think. We'll see. Linda has a reflection for us.
I'm going to try and tie this up because it wasn't until the very end that something came to me, which I always believe is not something in my own creation, but something that God guides me to share. When I worked at Lorton Community Action Center, one of my coworkers, Kathy Noon, she was the director of volunteers, and she was one of the ones who hired me the first time, and she was the person who convinced me to come back along with the board the second time, because LCAC was in a lot of trouble. And when Kathy was in her 20s, she had fell in love and married her husband, Jim. And Jim was in the Navy. So he was gone on board ship for, usually 6 months out of the year. And during that time, in the early part of their marriage, Kathy was diagnosed with lymphoma. And she made it through all those treatments, and they, as a result of the chemo and everything that she went through, they couldn't have children, and so they adopted Jimmy and Danielle from Colombia. And in 2016, Kathy was getting ready for Jimmy's wedding, her son's wedding, and she was having, wedding was in July, she was having some back pains in May and didn't think anything of it, thought she had strained something, and said, I'll go to the doctor after the wedding is over because I got too many things going on. She went to the doctor a couple of days after the wedding and was diagnosed with a recurrence of cancer. And in less than 4 weeks, Kathy was dead. And Jim, who is this amazing man, had since retired from the Navy and was working, doing intelligence with the federal government. When Jim and I talked the day of Kathy's funeral, he said, I asked him how he was doing, and he said, I'm good. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, they told me 34 years ago Kathy was going to die. They told me she was not going to make it through the cancer. And he said, these last 34 years have been a miracle. And I am grateful for everything we experienced, all the good and the bad, over that period of time. Now, I share this because I do think this is a little off the track of what James was talking about, but miracles and these presence of the gifts of the Spirit are what we see in them and what we believe and hold on to. And we can choose to look at our gifts and the gifts of others and dismiss them. Or we can choose to see the goodness in ourselves and others and celebrate it. Even in the tough times when things could be painful, we can instead hold on to those things. So when I think about all of these different things, I think about, how we can choose to embrace our gifts and embrace the different things in life that are happening at any given moment, and see them as God's amazing presence. Or we can discount it and push it aside and act like it doesn't matter. The truth is each of us, each of you, the entire world is filled with God's miraculous creation of gifts. And how we choose to live those out and see those things in us is really up to us. So have faith and hope and love, my friends, knowing that you are, in fact, created in the image of God, and that those gifts are called to be out there in the world to bring about the miracles of love.
One of the things we like to do is pray. I like to pray. Prayer looks different to me now than it once did. I once imagined and had a thorough list that just continuously grew. Before I came to serve St. James, I had a notebook of prayer requests at the church I served at that point, and had been for 2 years. I was on staff there. And I kid you not, it was 5 pages long. And I'm talking single-spaced, and I'm talking double-columned. And the imagined reality that I could pray for each one of those things every single day was what I was driven to prayer about. Now, if you have a list of things that you chat with God about, that's good. I still have a list of things. It's just much shorter. And it's whatever comes to my mind that particular day. You tell me something that you're concerned about, and it might rise in my prayer tonight as I'm going to sleep. It might rise in my prayer tomorrow morning, but I know God will hear from me. And since God is beyond time and space, your having even spoken the prayer request to me is itself prayer. The yearning for God's presence is prayer. Living our lives is a form of prayer. So prayer is much bigger than my 5-page lists. I no longer keep 5-page lists. In fact, my list consists of a number of sticky notes on a page. And I try to follow through, and eventually I peel off a sticky note and I put a new sticky note on. That piece of paper has been in existence for a couple of years now. And those sticky notes have changed with regularity. So whatever prayer looks like to you, we invite you into this time of prayer. We begin in a moment of silence. And perhaps silence is your prayer. Silence is God's first language before God spoke. And the Word was God and with God. And that Word began to unfold all that we know. However you see that silence, we use that moment in silence. I will pray out loud for us. There are certainly lots of things in the world, and I know of lots of them. And I watch the news about them regularly. Violence of human beings against human beings, things degenerating in all sorts of places. But one thing I want to be mindful of today is to celebrate those who have been the fathers in our lives. Separate from all the other pieces that we might pray about, those who have fathered us, mentored us, encouraged us, taught us what mattered in our lives. Now, I'm very fortunate. For me, it was my biological dad, who is still alive. I talk to Daddy every week a couple of times, and Mom too. But I still look to him for great wisdom, and I've been very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to be a dad, and I've got 2 lovely children. But that's not true for everyone. But all of us have mentored and encouraged one another, and in that way we can celebrate anyone who has mentored and encouraged us, and those that we have mentored and encouraged as well. Because in many ways that passing along of the stories, of the traditions, of truth is the job of that kind of fathering and mentoring. And so I encourage us all to live into that and to give thanks for those who have been our true mentors. And for those with whom we struggled, and for some folks it is their biological parents or others who were supposed to be mentors but failed in one way or another. This is a day of struggle for those who wished that they might have been a father and aren't. This is a tough time. And so in the midst of all of that, we'll hold that space as in our time of prayer that I'll lift up. We'll end in the Lord's Prayer. A version of that prayer will be on the screen behind me. It will also be on the screen in front of you if you're online. But you can pray any version you know, in any language you know, or no version at all, and that's perfectly fine. Let's enter into a time of silence together. Gracious and loving God, we don't always live up to our calling in life. Sometimes we fall down more than we get up. And in the midst of all of that, it's hard for us to believe that you still love us and see us as precious, and yet that's who you are. To you, we are not just human doings. We are truly human beings. And you look at us in ways we can't even begin to imagine. We come before you knowing that you are everywhere. So we're before you when we're driving in the morning to work. We're before you when we go to bed at night, when we eat our meals, when we're impatient with people who use our parking lot. All of those moments, you never abandon us. Never abandon us. Speak to us in the silences. Let us hear your truth and discern it when we can by the gift of your Spirit. Help us to be healing balms to one another so that others might describe us as a balm on their soul, a healing presence in their lives. Help us to bring peace and groundedness into every conversation, and even when we fail, help us to awaken to that reality and re-engage in ways that do matter and do bring peace. God, whatever way that your power and energy is working in the world, that, as Jürgen Moltmann would tell us, we often miss because we don't expect the unexpected. We expect the expected. Help us to be awake to surprises. ambush us in ways we are only beginning to imagine, and help us to live from a place of love. We do pray for those who have been our mentors, have fathered us in their various ways, and for those that we have mentored and fathered in our various ways. We're thankful for the ways in which you have been a father to us. And we pray that we'll live into that in ways that will transform the world. For maybe that is the miracle you hope and dream about in each of us. We lift all of this to you in the precious and holy name of your Son, Jesus, who is fully human and fully Christ, all in one, in ways we don't even begin to understand, and who modeled for us a way to live and also gave us the gift of a prayer that we say together now. Our Father in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours now and forever. Amen. Something else that we like to share is yet something else we don't fully grasp or understand, in some way beyond my ability to explain to you today. God is present when we share this cup and we break this bread together. Quite frankly, God is present every time you do it, wherever you are, whenever you are. But when we gather in this space and we are able to see in some way the presence of Christ in this bread, the presence of Christ in this cup, we might begin to see the unexpected in our everyday lives. The presence of Christ in places and people we can't imagine. A couple of things about communion. You're all welcome. You're all invited. This is God's table, not ours. You're all welcome to come. If it's in keeping with your faith, and that's up to you, you're welcome at this table. If for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable coming to this table, don't. And that's okay too. At the same time that we serve communion together, share communion together, we receive our morning offering. Quite frankly, we can receive morning and evening and daytime and all-time offerings online or in person through text. You can mail us a check if you want to. You can buy things from our Amazon wish list, which we distribute at the West End Food Pantry every Monday night. These are ways that you can give if you choose to. This is also a moment to reflect. What do you think about miracles? Have you experienced miracles? Have you told any about the miracles that you have experienced? How would you describe them? What made them miraculous for you? What do you think about these sign gifts? And perhaps it's an opportunity to pray that God would make clear for you what you need to know about these gifts. The last thing is how we do communion. Online, you do it the way you want, and if you're online, you're welcome to share communion. When I lift the cup, you lift the cup. When I lift the bread, you lift the bread, and you can have communion with us, or not. It's your call. Online, you may take communion the way you wish. In person, Linda will serve the cup. I will serve the bread. The bread is gluten-free. It is dairy-free. It is nut-free. It is baked in our oven in a gluten-free kitchen. So it is unlikely to be contaminated in any way. So you are welcome to the table. Let me tell you a story. Jesus knows that we trip up and fall. And at the end of his life, he gathered at a table with people like Peter, who would deny him 3 times before the next morning. Judas, who he served. Judas, who betrayed him. And all the rest, with the possible exception of Mary Magdalene, who did not abandon him, who kept vigil, according to Luke. All of them abandoned him, and yet he was unfazed. And he looked at them in love, and he gave them a gift that was meant to remind them of who they were, and promised that he would be present in the breaking of the bread and the sharing of the cup. And so we live into that promise when we do the same thing. So while they were eating dinner together, Jesus took the bread, he gave thanks for it, and he broke it. He gave it to his disciples, and he said, I want you to take and eat this, all of you. This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this as often as you will in remembrance of me. Also, after supper, Jesus took the cup, and when he'd given thanks, he gave it to his disciples, and he said, I want you to drink from this, all of you. It's my blood of the new covenant, shed for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. And so it is in remembrance of the one who showed us what it's like to live from a place of love, a place of grounding, a place of connection to God, a place of forgiveness, of letting go and of engaging with human beings, of being fully present in the moment wherever he went. It's in remembrance of that we come to this table asking that God would make this be for us the body and blood of Christ, that we might be for the world the body of Christ, living out of these gifts, miraculous and mundane in our everyday lives, always expecting the unexpected and trusting in God. But even when we fail to do those things, all of us redeemed by his blood, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Online, folks, feel free to take communion whenever you're ready. In person, folks, give us a chance to get down to where we're going. Every single one of you, online and in person, is a gift of God's grace to us. You're unrepeatable. There will never be another you, nor has there ever been one before. You are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved. And God let us know just how precious we are in becoming one of us and being willing to give that life away so that we might know what life looks like. Love in life likes our life being given away. So I encourage you to go from this place, to pray to discover what gifts it may be that you have, and to use it for the upbuilding and encouragement of all others that you meet. May you truly be the presence of God's love wherever you go. You are a blessing. Be that blessing wherever you go. In the name of Jesus, through the power of the Spirit. Amen.